Illy. What's going on, Corner? How you doing? Thank you all for coming out tonight. Yeah. Alright. Get your fucking hands up, Corner. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Illy.
Never said it's great. 4 or 5 years, I grew up with things amazing. Ain't no papers, take over your mistaken. Blue sky style shit, use no part of it. I don't raise my voice, I improve my argument. I've done it before, doing this and take you through it again. I'll sing about that. I feel sad.
Illy is an Australian rapper who has been harnessing his craft for more than a decade. He has numerous #1 albums and platinum records. He also managed to stay relevant after 10 years in the game when many of his peers couldn't do the same. This is his story so far. Illy grew up in Frankston, Melbourne, Victoria. He reps this very proudly in his music. Illy loved music at a very young age. He started to play the drums and originally wanted to be in a band. Then, around 12 years old, he discovered the likes of Jay-Z, Nas, Biggie and Tupac, and he fell in love with hip-hop ever since. He also claims that he started writing his first raps around 13 years old.
To backtrack just a bit, my first time I recorded my voice was at 17 at my high school studio. It wasn't barely a studio, it was just a room with a computer and a microphone. But I went to a private school, got kicked out, and the school that I wound up at, I credit with really allowing me to even think that doing music was possible because it gave me those tools.
Why did you get kicked out of school?
Just being a little badass, man. Just stupid shit. But
being a hip hop grommet.
yeah. So that was the first time I recorded, and I played a couple of shows at like underage things.
During his high school years, he started to discover Aussie hip hop. He started to like the acts of Hilltop Hoods, Bliss and Esso and Draft. Illy never took school seriously and would only focus on music and writing raps. Not many acts were living off their music back in the day, so these artists really inspire Illy to put his head down and focus solely on his music.
In Australian hip hop, Draft, Bliss and Esso, Hilltops. I've had the privilege of being able to tour with a few of those guys, so coming up, definitely them. Yeah.
He then started to release his own music. He dropped his first mixtape back in 2007 titled the Illy Mixtape Volume 1. The mixtape definitely gave him a small name in the scene. Around this time he also formed a crew with other rappers and producers such as J Scoob, Daniel Merriweather, M Phasers, Phrase and DJ Flagrant. They call themselves Crooked Eye. Illy brings them up a lot in his music. He then dropped his next mixtape titled the Illy Mixtape Volume 2. It was definitely a step up from his last mixtape. It also featured the massive hit track Rockstar Shit produced by M Phasers. Illy and M Phasers would go on to form a very strong music relationship over the next few years. By this time, Illy was starting to take music very seriously. He had now done up to about 200 shows. A lot of these shows were to empty crowds and also being the support act for fellow rapper Phrase, who was bigger than Illy at the time. All the hard work Illy had been doing eventually paid off. He ended up getting noticed by Pegs at the legendary Obese Records. Obese Records was the pinnacle hip-hop label at the time, also being home to the likes of Hilltop Hoods, Draft and Bliss and Esso. So this was a huge honour for Illy. He eventually went on to work on his debut studio album, mainly produced by M Phasers and J Scoob. Then in 2009 he dropped his debut studio album titled Long Story Short. The album didn't do enormous numbers, but it was definitely a step in the right direction for Illy, allowing him to go on a national tour. The standout track on the album was definitely Pictures. At the time it was nothing like we've really heard before and had more of a melodic style approach to it, and ended up getting added to Triple J rotation and played on radio stations all across Australia. Then in 2010, Illy wasted no time at all, dropping 2 singles off his next album titled The Chase. The singles he dropped were Cigarettes and the title track The Chase. These tracks did good numbers and definitely had fans itching for the new album. Then in October 2010 he dropped his second studio album titled The Chase. The album was a huge success and today is still a fan favourite. It also peaked at number 25 on the album ARIA charts. Many of the tracks were played all across radio stations in Australia. It was also nominated for an ARIA and is now certified gold. But the standout track was It Can Wait, which peaked at number 58 on the ARIA singles charts and also is now certified gold.
on the success of your second album, The Chase. Can you tell, I mean, it's been out for a year now, but can you tell us a little bit about your music and your sound?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of progressive, new school, positive Australian hip-hop, I guess is a good way of putting it.
After all the success of the Chase album and months of touring, Illy wasted no time at all, dropping his first single of his third studio album titled Heard It All. He then dropped another single titled Where You Been featuring Pez. Then, in September of 2012, he dropped his third studio album titled Bring It Back. He described this album as a passion project and a tribute to the scene. It had features from the likes of Raven, Bitter Belief, Thundamentals and Pez. It also scored Illy his first ever ARIA award for Best Urban Release.
It goes to Illy!
Bring It Back is Illy's third album. The Melbourne-born artist released his first album in 2009.
Bring It Back ended up being Illy's last ever release on Obese Records. He ended up teaming up with Unified Music Group and created his own label titled 1-2 Records. He since went on to sign the likes of All Day, Curran and Citizen K.
You have more control over it. That's basically it, man. You're not really answering to anyone. I wouldn't advise doing it immediately. I needed to have my bearings in the industry before I was able to do it. And it's not just my label. I co-own it with my management team.
So they say that you don't have to sit in there with the nitty gritty of the administration.
No,
stuff.
I mean I'm involved in it at some level.
Yeah,
but I just don't have enough hours in the day because it's not just my stuff. It's other artists on the label as well, and I wouldn't be able to do them justice and also myself justice and my career.
During all this touring and dropping albums, he was also studying for a law degree, which he ended up finishing. This is something he's very proud of. After all the success he's had in his career, he started to get into a bit of a rut. He wanted to level up his songwriting ability and take his career to the next level.
And we all just sat down on the balcony of the Edgy and came out all right, the next album we're going to go big. We're going to move away from what Bring It Back was, which was a hip hop album. We're going to go more into a big sort of pop world. Al, you can write these hooks. It's time to really push it.
He dropped 2 singles for the upcoming album, On and Youngbloods with Arn Stringer. They both hit the ARIA charts. He then dropped the huge single Tightrope with Scarlett Stevens from San Cisco. This was Illy's biggest song yet, peaking at number 18 on the ARIA charts and is now 2-time certified platinum. Also, in the lead up of the album, he dropped one of Triple J's biggest Leica versions ever. It now has nearly 10 million plays on YouTube. He then dropped his 4th studio album under his own label 1-2. The album was massive, peaking at number 4 on the album ARIA charts and having 4 other charting singles, and also featured Hilltop Hoods. He said that this is the album that really took his career to a new level. He started to get later slots at festivals and sell out bigger shows. While Illy's career was skyrocketing, he also copped a lot of hate, as a lot of people were jealous and were telling him that he sold out.
Yeah, man, I've been called a sellout before I even had a mixtape out. So when I was losing money to driving a hatchback 10 hours to play a show, I was still getting called a sellout. This shit, you build a thick skin pretty quick, particularly in hip hop.
He then took a small hiatus from dropping his next album, though he dropped another mixtape titled The Friday Flips Mixtape Volume 2 and a single titled Swear Jar. Then, in 2016, Illy teamed up with the super talented Vera Blue and dropped his single Papercuts. This song was an absolute colossal. It peaked at number 2 and I'm still shocked as to how it didn't go number 1. It's now 3 times platinum and still gets played on the radio to this day. Papercuts made Illy rise to superstar status. He then dropped his 5th studio album titled 2 Degrees. It was his first number 1 album. It also featured the massive track Catch 22, which is now certified platinum. Then in 2021, Illy dropped his 6th studio album titled The Space Between. The album became his second number 1 album. It features the likes of G-Flip, Robinson and Wax. I personally think it's one of Illy's best bodies of work yet. What Illy has achieved in his career so far has been enormous. He's been in the game for over a decade and has managed to stay relevant when many of his peers aren't even making music anymore. Say what you want about Illy, but he's never taken a step backwards and he's always pushed new barriers with his music. And I have no doubt that Illy still has a long career ahead of him. This has been the story so far by Desired Oz Rap.
I think it's a necessary evil.
So we got one song left, and I wish we were doing a whole show for you guys, but let's do it. This song's called It Can Wait.